Beijing, July 30th, 2025. Relentless torrential rains submerged China's capital under the heaviest floods recorded in 140 years. Between July 23rd and 30th, Beijing endured non-stop rainfall, with some districts receiving 744 millimeters of precipitation, equivalent to an entire year's rainfall compressed into a single week. At least 44 people have been confirmed dead, with over 80,000 residents evacuated as floodwaters overwhelmed homes, infrastructure, and emergency systems. Among the worst hit was a nursing home in Mian district, where floodwaters breached the facility with devastating speed. Trapped inside, 31 residents perished before rescue operations could reach them. 48 individuals were pulled from the building through windows and onto rescue boats, though initial reports failed to mention any casualties. Local officials in Mian were later reported missing. The tragedy exposed critical lapses in Beijing's emergency response protocols. Authorities issued a public announcement regarding the Mian Reservoir's emergency discharge only 33 minutes before the release, leaving downstream areas with little time to react. No prior evacuation order had been issued for the nursing home, which was deemed to be in a safe zone. Mian's CCP secretary, Yu Weiguo, later admitted, "For a long time, the town center where the nursing home is located has been safe. Our understanding of extreme weather events was insufficient." The China Meteorological Administration had forecasted the heaviest downpours from 6 p.m. Monday through Tuesday dawn. The deluge was triggered by a collision of low-pressure and high-pressure systems in the upper atmosphere, intensifying rainfall over Beijing and neighboring regions. Authorities cited soil saturation up to 50 millimeters deep as a critical factor amplifying flood risks, particularly in mountainous suburbs like Mian, Fengshan, Mentugu, and Huairu. The municipal flood control headquarters ordered the evacuation of over 82,000 residents. In-person school sessions were suspended. Public advisories urged residents to avoid unnecessary outdoor activities, and public transportation networks scaled back services as flood alerts expanded. Emergency crews were deployed across critical junctions. The Mian Reservoir, Beijing's primary water source, was operating dangerously close to full capacity before the storm. Designed to maintain a water level of 152 meters, it should have been proactively lowered to 150 meters during flood season to create a buffer. However, reports indicate it remained at 155 meters, leaving no flexibility to absorb sudden inflows. The emergency discharge forced by rising waters cascaded downstream with minimal advance warning, compounding the disaster. This operational oversight reflects a broader issue with China's high-volume water storage practices, which prioritize hydroelectric output over adaptive flood control. Reservoirs are often kept near full to ensure power generation efficiency, sacrificing flood mitigation flexibility. The Mian incident exemplifies how infrastructure optimized for peak output struggles to adapt to extreme weather volatility. Beijing's vice mayor, Xiaolin Mao, acknowledged these shortcomings, stating, "There are still shortcomings in our work, including insufficient forecasting and early warning capabilities for extreme weather, inadequate disaster prevention and mitigation plans, and deficiencies in infrastructure development in mountainous areas." However, despite public admissions, structural reforms remain distant. China's hydropower strategies further complicate flood control efforts. Projects like the under-construction Maedog hydropower station in Tibet, planned to be 3 times larger than the Three Gorges Dam, prioritize economic ambition over environmental resilience. Such megadams alter hydrological cycles, compress flood response times, and disrupt ecosystems. These infrastructural choices are driven by economic and political incentives, often sidelining community safety and environmental sustainability. In parallel, China's escalating carbon footprint undermines global climate efforts. The country accounts for 33% of global carbon emissions, burns over half of the world's coal, and leads in new coal power plant construction. Despite public commitments to green energy, policy execution remains mired in industrial overreach and centralized governance structures that prioritize top-down economic control. 2025 is shaping up to be China's hottest year on record, surpassing last year's extreme temperatures. Since March, an unrelenting heat wave has gripped the country, with 152 monitoring stations recording temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius by July. The July 2025 floods are a manifestation of intersecting crises: escalating climate volatility, infrastructural rigidities, and systemic governance shortcomings. The disaster was not unprecedented because of rainfall alone, but because of the scale of exposure it revealed. Beijing's drainage systems, power grids, logistics networks, and emergency response mechanisms were all brought to the brink, and many failed. Downstream regions faced compounded effects as water releases from Beijing's overflowing reservoirs surged into adjoining river systems, accelerating spillovers into Hebei and Tianjin. Critical transportation arteries, including the Beijing-Shanghai Expressway, remained submerged for over 48 hours. Industrial parks near Tongzhou and Sichuan suspended operations after floodwaters damaged machinery and facilities. Data centers and office complexes in northeastern business hubs suffered outages and evacuations as power systems buckled. Local markets experienced immediate supply disruptions. Distribution bottlenecks and road closures drove rapid spikes in the prices of fresh produce and essential goods. Emergency shelters, set up in suburban schools and public buildings, filled beyond capacity, leading to shortages of food and water supplies. Emergency response teams continued relocating residents from high-risk zones, while landslide-prone hillsides and riverbanks were closely monitored for sudden collapses. The Miyun Reservoir remained under close watch, with emergency discharge operations on standby if inflows surpassed safety thresholds. Natural disasters during China's summer months are not unusual, but the rapid escalation of this year's rainfall events has triggered broader concerns. Experts highlighted climate volatility and aggressive urban overdevelopment, such as wetland reclamation and vertical expansion, as key factors that have diminished the city's natural flood absorption capacity. As the waters recede, Beijing faces a critical juncture. Without structural reforms in urban planning, reservoir management, and climate adaptation strategies, the city and other megacities are increasingly vulnerable to future disasters. The true measure of this flood will not be its rainfall statistics or death tolls, but whether or not it spurs meaningful policy change to address the systemic weaknesses it exposed. The impact extended beyond Beijing. Northern provinces Hebei and Tianjin faced similar flood warnings as storm bands moved eastward. On China's southern coastline, the southwest monsoon added pressure with persistent rains. In Hong Kong, the observatory raised a black rainstorm signal at 11:45 p.m., warning of hourly rainfall exceeding 70 millimeters, which forced road closures and disrupted commuter traffic. As rainfall continues, the immediate focus remains on safeguarding lives. Yet beyond the storm, the question of Beijing's long-term resilience against mounting climate threats remains unresolved. If this report gave you insight into something the headlines overlook, don't scroll past. Subscribe for more in-depth stories that connect the dots between disaster and decision. Hit like to help more people see what's unfolding, and tell us what you think, because your voice might be part of the solution we're all waiting for. Stay aware, stay connected, and stay hopeful even when the rain keeps falling.